From the debt ceiling to politics for the 2024 election and the Durham reports and more, I talked with Congressman Darin LaHood, a Republican from Peoria, about those issues. And we start with reviewing his reaction to another report coming out showing that Chicago is behind only New York when it comes to losing population of 33,000 people in the most recent U.S. Census report of incorporated areas and migration trends. And LaHood, he reacted to the ideas that Democrats have put out there that the census is getting it all wrong. And they are essentially saying that the calculations are improperly done, and they're demanding that the U.S. Census revise Illinois' numbers upwards. I have not seen that indication from the U.S. Census that they're going to comply with that request. But where are they wrong? That's a question I posed to Congressman Darin LaHood in my conversation I had with him yesterday.
Well, I disagree with them. The policies put in place by Illinois, high taxes, high crime, lack of a good business climate continues to cause people to leave Illinois. We continue to hemorrhage people out of this state because of the policies. Now, I would just say, it's not just Illinois as a blue state with these policies. Look at New York, look at New Jersey, look at Connecticut. High tax states, got lots of issues with crime. Look at California. People are leaving California. Where are the states that people are going? They're going to places like Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, where you have policymakers, particularly governors and state legislatures, that have done just the opposite. Florida doesn't have any income tax, right? They want to keep it that way. They have the lowest crime rate in Florida in 50 years. They continue to have one of the best economies in the country. So I disagree with my colleagues. And look at the new mayor we elected in Chicago, who has doubled down on progressivism, defunding police, taxing people that make over $100,000 in Chicago. You're going to continue to have people leaving the state with the policies that Democrats have continued to double down on.
So LaHood also reacted to the Democrats wanting to have the census revise Illinois' numbers upwards and stoking some distrust in the U.S. Census numbers. But again, 85% of Illinois municipalities lost population in that census report. Chicago leading that, 33,000. We went through about how Aurora lost about 1,400. Cicero lost about 1,400. You have Evanston losing about 1,100, Skokie and Palatine losing around 1,000 people, Arlington Heights, Schaumburg, Berwyn, Des Plaines each lost more than 900 people, Rockford, Oak Lawn, Elgin, Peoria, Mount Prospect, Decatur, and Oak Park each lost about 800 people, Hoffman Estates, Tinley Park, Waukegan each lost around 700 people, Joliet lost around 517, Orland Park, Springfield, and Wheaton lost more than 400, and Champaign lost 97. But not every municipality lost. The latest census data shows that Bloomington and Normal grew about 33 combined people. Bolingbrook grew about 363 people, and Naperville led the state's incorporated areas over 50,000 with 483 more people. So not every municipality lost population, but still 85% losing population, with Chicago number 2 in the nation for population loss of all major cities. What about that request to change the population upwards? That's what the Democrats, especially Raja Krishnamurthy, are suggesting the census do. Republican Darin LaHood says no, that's not right. Here's Congressman Darin LaHood.
Well, I think it's a bit hypocritical for my Democrat colleagues to, the Biden administration is now, they have jurisdiction over the federal government, which includes the census, and they don't disagree with it, right? They don't agree with the numbers they're coming up with. These are the people that Biden has in place that are calculating these numbers on that. So, no, I think it's, I have confidence in the census system, just like I had confidence when Trump was there, and now I have it under Biden. But consistently, I don't know why my colleagues would be surprised, Greg, because consistently it showed that we've lost population in Illinois because of the policies over the last 10 years. It hasn't reversed itself because we continue to have the same old Democrats running the state.
So Congressman Darin LaHood pushing back on the idea that Illinois is gaining population, especially after 9 years of consecutive reports coming out showing that Illinois continues to lose population.
Well, we didn't get.
But it wasn't the only thing that I talked with Congressman LaHood about. We talked about the debt ceiling. We talked about the Durham report. We talked about the 2024 election, and we'll get to that coming up next here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. I'm Greg Bishop. If you like what I'm doing, follow along. Just search Bishop on Air on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We can connect that way. Again, Bishop on Air. Got to take a break, though, here on WMAY. It's continuing conversation I had with Congressman Darin LaHood yesterday. He's a Republican from Peoria. We talked about the census data, but we also talked about some of the big headlines coming out of Washington, D.C., including what's going to happen with the nation's debt ceiling. This obviously is going to impact all taxpayers, and Congressman LaHood giving us some insight into what to expect with ongoing negotiations.
You know, I think we're seeing that divided government is forcing the Biden administration to take a hard look at spending cuts. We're $32 trillion in debt. We got to figure out how we reduce spending in this country. You know, so I view that in companion with the debt ceiling. Now, I'm not one that believes that we can default on our debts. It will have a catastrophic effect on our economy and jobs and people that I represent, and that shouldn't happen. But we are having a conversation. We passed a bill in the House that does both of those things. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. Figure out a package of spending reductions. We're putting work requirements on welfare recipients. We're capping spending at 2022 levels. We're also looking at how we claw back some of the COVID money. I mean, these are all common sense things, and trying to do that in a bipartisan way to do that. And I feel good about where we're at right now. But, you know, with divided government, we'll see what happens. We're negotiating, and I don't want to go up to the very edge of defaulting. But, you know, we're going to be doing this negotiation for probably another week to 10 days.
So Congressman LaHood talking about the debt ceiling debates that are happening internally, and news is there's going to be some kind of continued negotiations throughout the weekend. But what does this matter to the taxpayers, to those sitting down at the kitchen table trying to hash out their budgets?
Well, the way it translated, every one of my constituents back home has to meet a monthly budget. Every business has to meet a budget. Every city and municipality has to meet a budget. Federal government hasn't been able to do that. When we pass the bill eventually to raise the debt ceiling along with spending cuts, what's that going to do is it's going to help reduce inflation because we have way too high of inflation. But it's also going to calm the markets and show that we as Republicans, this is something we ran on: fiscal responsibility, fiscal discipline, and bringing down, you know, the cost of living that has gone up in this country, but also reversing the trend on all the money that we've spent. And so we're finally, as Republicans, doing what we said we were going to do, is exercising fiscal sanity, fiscal responsibility, and holding the Biden administration accountable.
Again, Congressman Darin LaHood, a conversation I had with him yesterday about a variety of things, and moving from the debt ceiling debate to the Durham report took 4 years, millions of dollars. It's all about the genesis of the Trump-Russia collusion investigation that the FBI launched using Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants to get the authority to essentially spy on suspects or subjects in the Trump campaign and then the Trump administration. So obviously a lot of people were waiting for that report. Congressman LaHood being one of those waiting for that report. Here's his reaction to what the details were coming out of that.
Well, we didn't get the prosecutions we wanted, or the ones that actually put people in jail. But I think what the Durham probe shows, I mean, it shows a disturbing pattern that's really unacceptable in the federal government. It confirms that there were serious errors and shortcomings, obviously, with the FBI and their probe in the alleged connections between the Russian government and the Trump campaign during the 2016 presidential election. That is very apparent here. It confirms that the FBI repeatedly disregarded critical protections that safeguard Americans from unlawful surveillance. That was in there. And there must be accountability and reform at the FBI. Now, having said that, Greg, I'm a former federal prosecutor. I believe, that there are good people that work within the FBI and DOJ. And I will also say all of the things in the Durham report happened under Obama's FBI director, who was Jim Comey. And so there have been reforms and changes made since Jim Comey left. And so the Durham report highlights the mistakes made by Comey, and the distrust that many people have. We, as Republicans, have taken the initiative of bringing significant reforms to the FBI. I think you'll see that when we have a FISA reauthorization bill that'll come forth, where we're really gutting the authority that the FBI has and making sure that they're held accountable, and that there's punitive and criminal measures in place to help deter the type of activity that happened under Obama's FBI director.
So, Congressman LaHood, talking about the Durham report, and one thing you've got to consider is, the consumers of media and voters out there. This all deals with, the 2016 election and the spurious allegations that were made from a Steele dossier that was then laundered through the intelligence community to set up Trump and to cast aspersions on the incoming president. And that lasted, with corporate media parroting a lot of the allegations from the report, from the Steele dossier. It all turns out to be fabricated and promulgated by a media that was cooperating with the intelligence community to put this stuff out. You then stack on top, just before the 2020 election, the New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop being suppressed. So I asked the congressman, heading into the 2024 election, how guarded should voters be with all of this here in the ether?
Well, I think there's a lot of concern there, and a lot of it's valid. You have humans involved. You have people involved at the FBI and DOJ and some of these other agencies that frankly still need to be held accountable. But we have to figure out part of what we always have to do with the federal government is figure out how we fix it, how we reform it, how we put in safeguards. So we're looking at changing the punitive measures for FBI agents when they're bringing either a FISA application, when they're bringing a search warrant, when they're involved. Upping the criminal penalties for executives in the CIA and other intelligence agencies for when they cross that line. These are things that have never been in place before that are now being. We're also looking at changing and revising how the FISA court works, the inner workings of that. I would generally say, Greg, 85% of FISA has worked well to help protect Americans and our national security, but there is 15% that has not worked, and that's what the Durham report gets at. What are the teeth? What are the changes? What are the safeguards to fix the abuses? That's what we're looking at.
So this all happening, of course, with just the very, very near nature of the 2024 election. And when it comes to the Republican field, it was reported yesterday that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is going to be announcing next week, or at least filing papers to run for president, and that could come next week. Well, Ron DeSantis has made several visits to Illinois. Most recently, he was in Peoria, where Congressman LaHood was there to welcome and present the Florida governor in front of some Republicans at a Lincoln Day dinner in Peoria. I asked the congressman if that's an endorsement of DeSantis.
Well, we were pleased as part of our Lincoln Day dinner last Friday night to welcome Governor DeSantis to Peoria. We had a record crowd, 1,300 people there, biggest crowd ever. He gave a terrific speech, was well received by everybody there. Obviously, he didn't make any announcement on running for president, but he talked about the model in Florida and what he's been able to do. And it's really been remarkable what he's been able to do in terms of turning around the state of Florida, building up more Republicans in the state legislature there, his track record on the economy, on crime, on going after wokeism and cancel culture, fixing the education system. Lots of things, how he navigated COVID. So I think it's a real example. He highlighted that and talked about that. We'll see what happens. Obviously, he hasn't announced yet. I think people anticipate that he will. we're going to have a strong field of candidates out there. I haven't made any decisions on an endorsement yet, Greg. I still think it's early on this, but I served with Governor DeSantis. I like him, and I think he's got a tremendous record of leading. And the last point that I will make is I want a winner. I want someone that can win, someone that has a track record of winning and can help us keep the majority in the House and win all across the country.
So again, that's Congressman Darin LaHood, a conversation I had with him on a variety of issues yesterday, sharing that with you this morning here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk.